Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into the fossil record, looking at Brohisaurus. It's a dinosaur that's, well, it's proving to be a real head scratcher.
It really is, yeah. We've got quite the puzzle here. We're mainly looking at the first paper, the one announcing it in 2003.
Right.
And then there's this much newer one from January 2025 that's kind of stirred things up a bit, plus some other science papers for context.
Okay, so for you listening in, our mission today is basically to figure out what we actually know about Brohisaurus.
And maybe more importantly, what we don't know.
Exactly. It's a great window into how science works with, sometimes pretty limited clues. Right, let's get into it. Where did this all start?
It starts in Pakistan,
Yeah.
specifically the Sambar Formation. That dates back to the late Jurassic, the Cambrian age. That's where the first bits were found.
And we're not talking about, like, a whole skeleton here, are we? The holotype material, the official stuff. It's listed as MSM 86K to 94K, then some numbers missing,
Okay.
then 101K to 105K. That sounds really fragmented.
Oh, absolutely. Very fragmented. The first discovery was, well, mostly just indeterminate bits. Ribs, vertebrae, some limb bone pieces.
Indeterminate means they couldn't be sure exactly what part they were.
Pretty much, or couldn't assign them definitively without more context. It's key to remember how little they had to start with. That's often the case in paleontology, just these tantalizing fragments.
Okay. And who was it that first spotted these fragments and thought, hey, this might be something new?
That was Mohammed Sadiq Malkani. He found them, and he's the one who officially named Brohisaurus kurthari back in 2003.
I like the name. It seems very connected to the place.
It is. Brohisaurus means Brohi lizard. That's for the Brohi people living in the area.
Ah.
And Kurthari points to the Kurthar Mountains. So yeah, it really anchors the find to its location.
So 2003, Malkani names it. What did he think it was? What kind of dinosaur?
His first paper put it squarely in the Titanosaurian sauropods.
Okay, so titanosaurs. Those are the huge ones, right? Long necks, plant eaters, the
Well-
classic giant dinosaurs.
Exactly. That was the initial idea. The big, long-necked herbivores.
And what was the actual evidence? Was there like a really long neck bone or something?
Not quite. The main thing mentioned initially was a piece of a femur, a thigh bone.
Yeah.
Its diameter was about 12 centimeters, so roughly 4.7 inches. Even just that thickness suggested a pretty big animal.
Right. 12 centimeters diameter.
Ah.
How does that compare? We have a note about Untold.
Yeah, good comparison. Phuongosaurus is another sauropod a bit later, early Cretaceous, from Thailand. Its femur was way thicker, 20 centimeters diameter.
Oh, okay.
And Phuongosaurus is estimated around 15 to 20 meters long, so maybe 50, 65 feet.
So Brohisaurus, if it was a titanosaur, might have been on the smaller side of that group. Still huge, but maybe not the biggest giant.
Potentially, yeah. That comparison gives you some sense of scale, even from just a fragment.
And Malkani also thought there might be a link to Africa, something about Mellosaurus.
Right. He suggested similarities to Mellosaurus, which is an early titanosaur found in Africa. The thinking was, maybe this shows a connection, biogeographically, between the Indian subcontinent and Africa back then. Hints at how dinosaurs might have moved between drifting continents.
That's fascinating, thinking about those land connections. But, the story doesn't end there, does it? Sounds like its places a titanosaur got a bit shaky.
That's putting it mildly, yeah. That initial classification has faced, significant challenges. It's often called a dubious taxon now.
Dubious taxon. That sounds like paleontologist code for, we're really not sure about this one. What does that actually mean? Why the doubt?
It mostly boils down to lacking clear synapomorphies.
Synapomorphies.
Yeah.
Those are the unique shared features that let you group animals together, right?
Exactly. The features Malkani initially pointed to for Brohisaurus just weren't unique enough to Titanosauria. You could find similar things in other dinosaur groups. Without those clear, unique markers, you can't confidently place it. It really shows the problem. How do you classify something from such limited clues?
And the fact the bones were so broken up didn't help, I assume?
Absolutely not. That's the non-diagnostic part. The fragments are just too incomplete or generic to point definitively to one group over another, like trying to build a model car with just a few random bits of plastic.
But someone tried to find something later on. There was that 2013 paper by Mannion and others.
Yes, they took another look. Mannion and colleagues in 2013 identified two possible features: synapomorphies of a slightly broader group, titanosauriforms. Not quite Titanosauria itself, but close relatives.
Okay, what were those features?
One was pneumatic cavities, little air pockets in the thoracic ribs, the ones on the torso.
All right.
And the other was that the femur fragments seem to have an elliptical, sort of oval cross-section, not perfectly round. These are features seen in some early titanosaurs and their kin.
So a couple of hints, maybe?
Yeah.
But still not enough to say, yep, definitely a titanosaur.
Pretty much. Hints, possibilities, but not conclusive proof. It didn't really settle the debate. The uncertainty kind of just lingered.
Which brings us up to 2025, and a proposal that sounds, well, completely out of left field.
It is a major shift, yeah. So Malkani published another paper in 2025, this time in the Open Journal of Geology.
Okay.
And in this paper, he suggests a totally different relationship for Brohisaurus. He's proposing it might be allied with Ankylosauridae.
Whoa, hang on. Ankylosauridae, the armored ones, like Ankylosaurus itself, that's a massive leap from a long-necked sauropod.
It is. A huge leap. We're going from potentially gigantic long-necked plant eater to maybe a quadrupedal, tank-like dinosaur covered in armor.
What on earth made him suggest that? Was there new fossil evidence?
The paper argues, based on finding several osteoderms, those are the bony plates, the bits of armor, that guys like Ankylosaurus have embedded in their skin.
Osteoderms, okay.
Malkani now believes these osteoderms found in the area can be referred to Brohisaurus. If true, if they belong to the same animal as the original bones, that would radically change everything.
If they belong. But,
Yeah.
there's a but, isn't there? Something about the journal it was published in, Open Journal of Geology.
Yes, that's an important bit of context. That specific journal has been identified by some as a predatory publisher.
Predatory publisher, what does that mean in science?
It generally means a publisher that might prioritize profit over rigorous scientific standards,
Yeah.
particularly peer review.
Peer review being where other scientists check the work before it's published.
Exactly. It's a cornerstone of scientific validation. If the peer review process is weak or questionable, it raises concerns about the reliability of the published findings.
So it doesn't automatically mean the ankylosaur idea is wrong.
No, not automatically, but it does mean the scientific community will look at this new proposal with extra caution. It needs more scrutiny, perhaps independent verification, because the usual checks and balances might not have been as robust.
Okay, so let's try and wrap our heads around this. Where does Brohisaurus stand now? We started with a possible, if shaky, titanosaur. Now, there's this ankylosaur idea based on osteoderms, published in a journal that raises some flags. It sounds messy.
Messy is a good word, yeah. Like the notes say, it's still very much a problematic genus of dubious dinosaurs.
Dubious dinosaurs. I like that phrase.
We have these totally conflicting ideas, both stemming from really limited fragmented fossils. First, a possible early giant sauropod, now maybe an armored dinosaur. It just highlights how tough this work is and how much interpretation is involved.
So the big picture for you, listening, is just how challenging it is for paleontologists, right? They're trying to build this picture of an extinct animal from sometimes just scraps.
Absolutely.
And Brohisaurus is like a perfect case study. How new finds, or even just relooking at old finds, can completely flip the script.
It really is. It shows science in action, the constant questioning, the reevaluation. Our understanding of these ancient ecosystems isn't set in stone. It evolves as we learn more, find more, or even just think differently about the evidence we have. Even tiny fragments can force huge shifts in thinking.
So to sum up, Brohisaurus, still a mystery dinosaur. Its identity has swung wildly, from maybe a titanosaur to maybe an ankylosaur, and it really drives home how much debate and uncertainty can surround discoveries based on incomplete evidence.
Definitely.
It makes you think, doesn't it? How can these few broken bones lead to such different reconstructions of an entire animal millions of years later? And what does that uncertainty tell us about trying to know the deep past? Maybe, take a moment to look up the differences between sauropods and ankylosaurs. They look so different. It's wild to think one dinosaur could be mistaken for the other.
It really puts the challenge into perspective.
Indeed. Well, until our next deep dive, keep thinking about those ancient mysteries beneath our feet.